Okay, today I'm going to review Why We Sleep, Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams by Matthew Walker, PhD. So I read this book about halfway through last year. I saw the author on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's a long podcast, it's like 2.5 hours or something like that, and it was a really good podcast. I really enjoyed it. And I went out and picked up this book, and I didn't know anything about it at the time, just that the author was really knowledgeable, and it was very interesting hearing him talking about sleep. So I picked up the book, and I really enjoyed this book. This was one of the best science books I read last year, and this book covers every single aspect you can imagine about why we sleep, what happens if you don't get enough sleep, and then what things really affect the way you sleep or how much sleep you get. So it's very practical, it's extremely interesting, and it's one of the few science books I've ever read that made me change the way I do things in my life. Every time I've picked up this book and started reading, I've ended up trying to get more sleep because it really is kind of frightening, all the bad things that happen when you don't get enough sleep. You might have heard about this book because when it came out or when it got popular, a lot of people were talking about it. I think it was on like Oprah, and it was everywhere, all the big media outlets. And there's all this gloom and doom about not getting enough sleep, and it's pretty much all because this book came out. And one of the reasons why I think this book was so good was that the author had spent his entire career on sleep. He's a researcher. I mean, he's a PhD. He spent his whole career researching it. And as he's going through and talking about all the different aspects of sleep, he personally researched and did studies on most of the aspects of it. So it's a really first-hand account from someone who's extremely knowledgeable about the topic. And it really comes across. And I really enjoyed this book. The other thing that I really liked about this book is it's only 315 pages. I mean, it's not that thick, so... I mean, it's not that thick compared to other science books. There's a couple like Robert Sapolsky's Behave. That book was really long. Like Steven Pinker's books are long. But this one was pretty short and sweet. I mean, it doesn't take that long to read. And because it's so short and the author, he knows so much that this book has no fill. There's no filler. Every single page is full of useful information, making a useful point. And it really is enjoyable to read because of that. You're never slogging through nonsense. There's everything that's being said is important and interesting. And I mean, you spend a 30-year life sleeping, so reading the #1 book on sleeping or what happens when you sleep is really interesting. I could spend a long time just going to specifics about the book and the things he talks about, but I just want to make one point. That one of the things I thought was the most interesting that's covered in here is the author goes through exactly what happens in every phase of sleep. And he shows that when you don't get enough sleep or you drink when you sleep and then you miss certain phases of sleep, he connects like what's happening in that phase of sleep to like the negative impacts from not getting that phase of sleep. And I think everyone that reads this book will have experiences that directly tie into what the author's talking about, because he talks about sleep spindles and the last phase of sleep and how that's like your long-term memory and how that's weaving together things. And if you've ever read something or learned something, especially if you're in college, and then you wake up the next day and just feels like everything just left your brain, even though you knew it the day before, that's one specific phase of sleep whose sole purpose is to take that short-term memory stuff and then integrate it into your long-term memory. And it's just little things like that I think made the book so interesting for me. So I would definitely recommend this book. I mean, even if you're not normally a science book person, this is a short book. It's not that difficult to read, but I mean, it's really good. It's very interesting, and it'll make you change the way you do things, and it'll illuminate probably a lot of things that you've experienced in the past and give a kind of a context and a background for why that's happening. And, it's not just that you can't remember stuff or that you're stupid. A lot of it comes down to not getting sleep or not getting the right type of sleep. So definitely go and pick this book up. I think it came out in 2017, but I only heard about it last like midway through last year in April or something. So it's still pretty recent. It should be everywhere you look. I think there's a couple charts in here, but not too many. So the audiobook should be fine. Though he talks about sleep so much you might want to take a nap halfway through, so it might not be the best book to read while you're driving. But definitely pick it up and check it out. And stick around. I got some more reviews coming. So like, subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed this video.